Thank you for joining Effortless Attraction. My name is Evelyn McAleer. I'm the author of A Life You Want, Effortless, and The Woman's Journey. I'm a life coach, business mentor, and inspirational speaker. And my greatest value is making a difference in people's lives. So I hope through these podcasts, I can make a difference to your life. A little bit more information before we pop on over to the podcast. So we're currently residing in the stunning province of Almeria in the south of Spain. As an extension of my mentoring and life coaching services, I'm now offering 4-night retreats tailored for women who are ready to prioritise themselves. So if you're a woman and you're interested in spending quality time with myself and 2 other participants, please visit my website for more details. Additionally, for business leaders and coaches who wish to have their own retreat here in Spain with their clients, I handle all of your logistics, including airport transfers, accommodation and meals for your group. If you'd like to request a retreat proposal, kindly send me an email. You'll get all of my contact information in the description below. Thank you.
Effortless Attraction podcast is sponsored by Colette Leeson Interview and Career Coaching. If you dream of landing your ideal job, consider Colette's services. With a success rate exceeding 90% among her interview clients, Colette offers personalized career guidance and interview coaching discreetly, both online and in person. She also conducts workshops and provides career advice talks. For further details, visit ColetteLeeson.com.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on another Effortless Attraction podcast. Well, I love to bring a variety of guests, and I am quite sure there will be many a listener will certainly appreciate this podcast today. I am joined by Katrina Mallon from the wonderful County Tyrone, and her business is called Destined for Greatness NI. She supports parents, carers, teachers, to nourish and to empower our children and young people. She began her business in 2020, but previous to that, she has been in the education system for 22 years. Katrina does one-to-one training and support for parents. She does school workshops and a variety of workshops for parents. And really it's about our children. And she works and helps parents and carers with toddlers up to 19 years of age. You must be an angel sent from heaven. Katrina, you're most welcome today.
Thank you so much, Evelyn, for having me. I'm so pleased to be here.
Well, I actually think that this is going to be a very informative podcast because I'm quite sure when mine were young, but I'm still going through stuff with them, I'm like, oh, I'd love if somebody had came along and said, what is the right way? Can I ask you the first question? Is there a right way to parent?
There's a right way for you to parent your child, and only you know it. And I think we all get tangled up in the right and the wrong of it, and we tie ourselves up in knots. And really, I think the most important thing that we as parents can remember is that it's perfectly imperfect, and that's just how it's supposed to be. And we're going to make mistakes, you know, we're going to make mistakes and we're going to mess it up. And that comes with the territory. But what do we do? When we make those mistakes, you know, we have 2 choices. We can crucify ourselves, beat ourselves with big sticks, and the mistakes define the next part of our journey with our kids. Or we can teach our children that mistakes are an opportunity to learn and grow, and we can make things right, move on and learn and do better the next time. I think that, you know, I needed support right through my parenting. I know all the stuff, but in action, it's totally different. I mean, I'm a parent to 2 grown-up children. And, you know, there are times that journey for us has been really, really, really very, very wobbly. And I think what parents are missing is that safe space to really put it all out there, ask questions, even the stupid questions, because we're so disconnected as parents, you know, and all of us are wondering the same things all of the time and thinking the same things all of the time. And if I was, you know, to describe parenting in a nutshell, you know, as parents, we do the best that we can with the skills that we have in the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And sometimes that's brilliant. You know, there's some days we're rocking it out of the park as parents. Some days we're giving 100%. But on the days that we only have 40% to give, we're still giving 100% because, you know, you are a parent from the moment your child's conceived until you die. There's no, you know, you don't stop being a parent, I listen to lots of, we talk about the ages and stages of parenting and how, the baby stages, oh, it's terrible and you're going to be knackered and, you're going to be this and then the toddler and the terrible twos and all these ways that we describe the ages and stages and how hard it is and how awful it is. And it's not hard or awful, it's different. The challenges at each age and stage are different. And as you know, Evelyn, when you've grown up children, you don't stop being their parent. It never goes away. It just, the dynamic changes and shifts and the relationship changes and shifts. And we parent according to what our children need us to do and to be. So,
well, you just finished there by saying we parent by what our children need us to do and need us to be. Now, that sounds, and I'm quite sure it isn't, what you're meaning, what they need us to be. So I have to conform to what my child needs me to be. Is that what you're saying?
no, because to me, parenting is about being attuned and responsive to ourselves. So having a deep understanding of our own kind of inner world, our own emotional landscape of where we're at and how we do things and how we're minded to raise our children. That all has impact on our children, but also to take into account our children's needs at the different ages and stages and what they require from us as parents. And at all of the ages and stages, that kind of changes. But the common thread is our children need us to be safe places. They need safe harbour, and that never changes. Our children need us to be attuned and responsive and to help them navigate a really complex emotional landscape because kids don't naturally know how to navigate all that stuff. Lots of parents don't know how to naturally navigate all that stuff. So it's okay that we're learning about that and growing along with our children. And I think quite often as parents, we're frightened, we're scared. We're scared to get it wrong. We're scared of doing harm. Modern parenting, quite a few of us are scared of our children. We're scared of really holding a boundary, a safe boundary in and around our children. We're really conflicted about what is an appropriate boundary for kids. And there's so much information out there and so much pressure that it's so tough for parents to kind of pull that all apart and decide which bits are the good stuff.
Yeah. Well, look, we can see by generations, it's all changing. I mean, sometimes, to be honest with you, Katrina, I look at how it has changed from when I had kids to when people have kids now, and there's so much stuff. I mean, seriously, so much stuff. And it astounds me, even with the whole bottle thing. And I know you don't do babies, but then, and so many books to read and so many things. And I have to say, there's parts of the old school I'm in favor of that. But I know as far as dealing with children's mental well-being, that's a big, big thing. Perhaps is it something in certain counties and certain countries that we don't talk about our emotional well-being when they get that wee bit older?
I think when our children get older, when our children enter their teenage years, there is that, parents talk about that separation in their children when they become teenagers, that their children don't need them anymore. And, that sense of grief and loss of an older child. And I suppose that's not necessarily true. Our teenagers are hardwired to separate from parents to find their independence, but it's absolutely not that they don't need us. And to go back to what you said about stuff, oh my word. How could you keep up with all of the stuff that you're supposed to have, the stuff that you need, the comparison of, you need to have this. I was speaking to a friend last week and she had happened to be at a baby fair and she described a thing called a rocket. Now, you put this thing, I don't know what it is or what it looks like, but it's something that you attach to the side of your baby's pram and it literally rocks the baby for you. And it makes me so sad when I hear things like that because our babies and our children do not need all of the stuff. And yet we run ourselves ragged. You're never going to run out of stuff. Once you've got all the stuff, there's always going to be more stuff. And our children are right from babies, right? They don't need it. They don't need it. That old
So can I
saying.
ask what the question? Sorry for interrupting there. Why do parents buy it? I have seen now, we had the grandchild, Jim's daughter's daughter was over, and I find it astounding how much for making bottles, that's all changed. There's a flask for hot water, a flask for cold water. There's a bag that charges up that you put the things in that sterilizes it all. And there's something like, whatever happened to making your bottles up? And that's
And
all changed.
we're under so much pressure as parents to get it right. And we have to remember, let's be very realistic about the thing. The parenting industry is huge. It's a massive commercial industry. The more stuff that we can get our parents to buy, the more, do you know what I mean? The more money we generate. And I think an awful lot of that is really, really good business, really, really good marketing on behalf of these companies. Fantastic. But throw half it out. I recently asked a midwife. My daughter had a baby a week ago,
Oh,
yesterday.
congratulations.
And that's baby number two. And she is very, very easygoing about her motherhood, and she asks lots of questions and we talk a lot about it, but she's very chilled. And I was asking a friend of mine who's a midwife, what is it that we actually really need? And she said, apart from somewhere safe for baby to sleep, a wee sling, and whatever you're going to use to sterilize your bottles, that's it. That's it. And yet, in all, we as parents, you think about the things that our children acquire, the material things, and it doesn't stop in babyhood. That's where it just starts. Your parents are pushing prams that, they're more expensive than my first
Oh
car.
my gosh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But listen, I can see the changes that happen. But when I reflect back, and really when I think about it, when mine were younger too, we had a room dedicated to toys. I mean, my parents certainly did not have that. Our room in the house with toys. But anyway, I'll get on. So that's past the stuff. Yes, and it's marketing and it's great business, and we don't need, because maybe somebody else has down the road, and that it doesn't make you a better parent. Now, a question. I would be very much into quantum physics and energy and stuff like that, but I have heard it often that up until the age of 7, and you start work with toddlers, the child's like this imaginative, this lovely, this curious and sees all, but then from that age, they start taking on the parents, the surroundings. I take on your fears. I'll take on your beliefs. I'll take on what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. I take it on from you, and therefore I start making them my beliefs. Do you see that, Katrina, happening?
Absolutely, Ellen. We download all our parents' stuff, don't we? We just download it, and if that's what we're exposed to, and I suppose that in saying that out loud, look, you find parents feeling really, oh my God, what pressure I'm under. Um, and from the age of 7, yeah, our children are so heavily influenced by peers, by what's happening out. They take on all of this stuff that isn't necessarily true. And I think our children start to get tangled up. And mostly, if I'm going to be brutally, brutally honest, our children are a dream to work with. And I've worked with children. I've spent most of my career working with children who have significant difficulty in terms of managing their emotions, their behavior, and who may have experienced trauma, whatever it might be. Um, our children are easy to work with. If we want to affect change in our children and young people, we start with the grown-ups. When the grown-ups change, everything changes. So as grown-ups, we do have a tremendous responsibility in and around every interaction that we have with our children has the power to build them up or break them down. When you start to really think about that. And as parents, nobody taught us all that stuff. Nobody taught us, the skills of how do we be emotionally attuned and responsive to our children. How do we hold space for the big giant feelings that they're trying to navigate? How do we help them navigate a world where, things are going to go wrong? They're going to have brilliant times, but they're also going to feel really tricky things. When 9 times out of 10, us as parents have real difficulty in managing ourselves. In finding that place within ourselves where we're okay, and I'm not talking about, tiptoeing through the tulips and being happy all the time, Evelyn, because that's not, you know, that's not possible. And I think as parents, we assume, we're led to believe a couple of things. We're led to believe that our children experiencing difficulty and experiencing difficult emotions and having hard, honest conversations, that they're not fit for that, that we have to somehow protect them from all of the stuff that we think is bad. And we decide from very early on what the bad stuff is. And we protect our children from making mistakes. We helicopter parent them. Many times you see children playing outside now.
I know.
Running the
This is,
road.
yeah, because yeah, well, I suppose, and that was the thing of a change, because this has come up in discussion many a time where, like Jim would have said, when him and his brother were younger, heading off over the fields, and if they failed or done something, they didn't tell it when they got home, but they learned a lot of skills from that. We were allowed to go out on our bikes. There was no mobile phones, but then people said, well, there wasn't the dangers about then that there was now. I think that there was,
Mm,
but yeah, so that just when you're on about helicopter parenting,
yes.
keeping them safe. And I work with many women, and it's amazing. It really is amazing. I can say it also for my own daughter. I see a lot of women that have daughters now that are, well, are probably in their 20s plus. They're nearly a mirror image of the mother when, she was that age. And the thing is, the mother's trying to protect the daughter. I don't want them making the same mistake that I made. But it's not that I am cold hearted with things. I says, this is their journey.
Yeah.
They have to learn. And listen, geez, I could write a whole book. I have three, a girl and two boys. The girl, totally different than the lads, totally different than the boys. And there comes a stage, and I just think, I really hope they learn from this one. I really hope they learn from this one. I really hope they learn from this one. And because I don't know what else to do.
And that is part of the challenge of parenting, because in order for our children to learn and grow, they have to make mistakes. Our job isn't to bubble wrap them and, keep them inside and protect them from the world. I do laugh, right from our children are babies, we have this kind of notion built into us of things that are good for our children and things that are not good for our children. And when children are good, what a good child looks like and what a not good, all this good and not good when it comes to our kids. And, we don't want them to feel the difficult things. We don't want them to have the difficult days and feel the difficult emotions. Many parents, see their child cry and can't bear it. We need to stop that. They'll do whatever it takes to get their child to stop crying and be happy. You need to be happy. And that's, a child's kind of baseline setting is happy all the time. When we know that's not true. I mean, in order for a child to be emotionally healthy, we as adults have the very difficult job of helping them to deal with all of the emotions. None of them are good or bad, they just are. But we have these ideas as adults about acceptable emotions for our children to feel. And what we're raising effectively are children who are comfortable dealing with the good stuff as we would have it. And the tricky stuff, they find it really difficult to navigate. And that's where parents come to me when, their children's behaviour, because behaviour is communication, their children's behaviour is telling them that they don't have the skills or capacity to manage the tough stuff. And partly we're to
What would
blame.
you class as the tough stuff, and what age are we talking here? So say if someone was listening, probably teenagers, is it, Katrina?
Right from when our children are toddlers, I am very blessed. I have two children of my own, they're up and reared, and I have two grandchildren. And right from our children, our toddlers, we don't like to see our children cry. We don't like to see them sad. We don't like to see them disappointed. God forbid that they should feel angry about something. Children begin to, we all have a complex emotional landscape, and our children are no different to us. So when people talk about the terrible twos, that's really the parents' first experience of managing a child who's trying to navigate really big feelings and really big emotions. So right from that age and stage, right up through into adulthood, our job as parents isn't to take those difficult experiences, difficult feelings away. It's to help to give our children the skills, the capacity, the resilience, the mindset
So is
to
that
not.
to allow them? So just to get that clear. So for example, I don't know, is that to let them cry? Is that to let them just, they'll be grand. It'll be
Not,
100%.
no, they won't be grand. Well, let them cry. Depends on their age and stage. So we talk about children don't have capacity to regulate big feelings. Yeah. And in order for them to learn how to tolerate and regulate big feelings, they have to experience them just the same as us grown-ups. You know that old saying, you have to feel it to heal it.
Yeah.
You know, emotions are there for a purpose. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying get swept away in the tide of it all and, but what I'm saying as parents, when our children are trying to initially navigate big feelings, big emotions, it's not our job to tell them that the emotions, the feelings aren't okay. We talk about regulation for adults, being able to navigate all of that in a way that's emotionally healthy. Children don't know how to regulate. So adults have a big job. We're children's co-regulators. So we have to sit on the feelings bench with them. When they're experiencing the big wobbly feelings, the big tricky things, and our children need to hear that all of the feelings have room, all of them. They all have space. Feelings and emotions are messengers, and they're not something that we should be frightened of. And I think parents really struggle with that because it's like, children should be happy all the time. They shouldn't feel sad. They shouldn't feel angry. They shouldn't feel
Yeah,
jealous.
because I'm giving them everything. They have
Yeah,
everything.
but jealousy starts when a child's a toddler. Do you know that it's there? Do you know it's hardwired into us? For human beings? That's part of the bag. Children are no different than grown-ups. The biggest difference with our children and the grown-ups is that our children don't have the skills and capacity to navigate and to regulate those big feelings and to work with their wee brains and their wee bodies. Now we're supposed to have those skills as adults. Many of us don't. And
No.
so quite a lot of the work that I do is to help adults develop that capacity for emotional regulation so that they can be the safe harbor emotionally for their children.
So
Um,
tell me this then, Katrina, because I know whenever my lassie we used to do Irish dancing, and when I think back, sorry, Erin Rose, if you're listening, the pressure, putting on the wigs, oh, the running. But I always said, when you cease to be happy, we stop this. So
yeah,
of course, the year that she could drive a car, she says, "I'm not happy at this anymore," and drive herself to it. So we stopped the Irish dancing. But do you feel that it's a thing? Maybe with parents that, and I know, people talk about the children's happiness, but the pressure in the education system to achieve to your next thing, you'd need to be, is that still going on? Are parents not that emotionally connected now, such a thing to say, hold on a wee minute. Do your best. It's not all about your grades. You're going to go on ahead and do whatever it is that you're happiest at doing. Or are we still at that mindset? No, you need your grades. You need this. You need that. You need, and the child feels pressurized.
it depends. It depends on the parent. And, as you said earlier on, our attitudes and values transfer over to our children very quickly. So if we are hardwired, if we are of the belief and mindset that, in order for you to be successful, you have to, get the grades and you have that has a huge impact on our children because what are we teaching our children? That success is measured by your exam results. Now, to me, I would advise any parent that I'm working with at whatever age and stage, we don't talk about, success in the outcome. We're not driven to, the end goal, whether it be the exam, whether it be whatever it is. Success for our children, if we want them to understand achievement and success, we have to celebrate the process. Do you know? Rather than, so for a toddler, rather than, oh my God, look at that beautiful picture. That's the best picture in the whole world. It's not. It's absolutely not the best picture in the whole world. That's a load of rubbish. Do you know?
Oh, we picture
Even-
they've done this. Funny, there was a conversation came up the other night. We are saying, and I think there are schools that are doing sports days, and every child gets a medal. So there is no winner. Everybody gets a medal. And I know when I was at school and still would be have competitive. So I set myself to win. So, but I don't know, does that help anybody? You're all winners. So what
I-
happens when they get big and go out in the world and the next thing they didn't achieve it, something like, but I always got awarded.
Yeah. And I think part of that, setting our children up for these unrealistic expectations, is in and around the adults. idea that children don't have capacity for the hard stuff. You know, they don't have capacity for disappointment. They don't have capacity for failure. Do you know, our children have capacity for all things. We just have to support them with that. So our attitudes and values in and around managing disappointment, managing failure, if we think a disappointment or a failure or a mistake is the end of the world, naturally we're going to transfer that on to our child. Whereas, you know, in our house, Evelyn, I have two grown-up children and I worked in education. I was a teacher, so obviously education is important. I kid you not, I cared less what my children achieved at school. I cared more about their capacity to navigate the world in ways that were healthy for them, to make good choices, to come back to us as, you know, base camp when things felt a wee bit wobbly, to have integrity, to have generosity, to be kind, all of those lovely things. So whilst I have children who achieved in their own ways and very different children, you know, I have a neurotypical child and a neurodivergent child. So their whole wiring is completely different. Um, as a parent, I am prouder of the qualities, the skills that they have and how they move in the world as happy, healthy adults. More proud of that than I am of all of the other stuff. So as parents, we set the tone, don't we? We get to work with our children in and around what's important, what success means for us, you know, in our family, what that looks like. And I think for parents, they have to decide there's a piece of work in and around, you know, what does our family need to look like? Do you know, whenever you have children, there's this sense of we're going to wing it. We're just going to wing it. Do you know, we're going to just, and there is an element to going with the flow, absolutely. But this notion that parents have is our kids will be fine if we just wing it. Well, actually, as parents, surely we should be consciously deciding how we do things in our families. You know, how does it work? You know, what's really important in our household and for our children. And I suppose for ours, you know, we would definitely, that sense of groundedness, that sense of integrity. Honesty was a really big one, especially when my children were teenagers. Do you know, we had a rule in our house, tell me the truth at all times because I'll be the one helping you bury the bodies. You know?
Dear Lord. Well, on that note, because I've seen it with, I suppose, parents of friends of my children, where they possibly wouldn't have conversations with their parents. They're afraid to have conversations with their parents. We were rare, I suppose, our home house was an open door and there was more people in and out. And if somebody needed a bed, they got it. I kind of done the same too. I often wonder, did it ever benefit anybody? But that's how we were reared. Do you, in the children that you speak with, Katrina, do they ever say to you, look, I'm afraid to speak to my father. I'm afraid to speak to my mother because they'll be angry, they'll be cross. This is not what they wanted.
Quite often, and you know what? You hear it coming from parents too. I'm afraid. You know, what if they don't want to? What if I get it wrong? And that fear on both sides. It's like an insidious thing. It starts as a way, oh, I'm not going to. And over time, it becomes the elephant in the room, if you like. You know, these children who want to make connections with their parents, these parents who want to connect with their children, and they're all afraid. And guess what? They're going to make a mess of it to begin with, no matter what they do. So to me, I just think don't be afraid to have really open, honest communication from with your children from a very, very young age. Do you know, your children should be able to talk to you about things if they see that you're frightened or that you can't tolerate or you can't hold space for difficult things with them, they're going to withdraw over time, aren't they? And as adults too, that wasn't how many of us experienced our parents. You know, thank
Mm.
God I was reared in a house where we did have the open door. You know, we had conversations with mummy and daddy about everything. And I'm sure there were times poor mummy and daddy were cringing on the inside with the things that we were saying, but sure we didn't know it. You know, I know many's the time my kids have come to us with things. My husband and I have to do we need to have a talk about this to get on the same page before we get back to our child about whatever the issue has been, step into the office, love. And in the office, we're going, what? What will we? But I think as long as there is a willingness and an element of, I have to be brave. Do you know, we're not going to break our children. You know, silence is the poison that destroys our families. Communication is something that opens it all up and keeps us connected. And we do lose that communication with our children. You know, our teenagers withdraw and don't necessarily want, you know, you could have a child, one minute it feels like they're telling everything, you know, everything about their world, all about their friends, and then they hit their teenage years and they pull back. And that's when this sense of separation somehow comes in with our parents, because parents feel a rejection nearly. You know, they mourn a relationship that they had with a younger child without realizing that that's naturally what our teenagers do. And we have to learn a new way to communicate with them that is respectful of the stage that they're at in terms of their development, that's respectful of their privacy, that's respectful of them wanting to keep some things from themselves for themselves, you know.
Yeah.
So I think we get stuck and we overthink everything, don't we?
Yeah, I think another thing that, especially women, more so than the men who I have been speaking with, carry guilt. A
Isn't it a
huge
great one?
guilt. Even if women are coming away here on retreat or if they're coming, I don't know, it's guilt. I have carried that for quite some time, but now I've decided I'm putting it down because in my head, when I get them to 18, and I have done my best and I have provided, and I think 18, you've got to learn yourselves now because I'm being selfish or not selfish. It's my time. So I'm done. There's still morsels of it is still about guilt. But yeah, so I'm sure you speak to quite a lot of parents, Katrina, that carry
Oh
it.
God, mummy guilt is horrendous. It is absolutely horrendous. And do you know, much of the guilt that we experience, we generate ourselves. We absolutely generate ourselves. We hold ourselves accountable to standards that aren't even real. I am so glad that I was a mummy with young children before the days of social media. Imagine the comparison. Do you know, no matter what you do, you look on socials and you're always going to fall short. And that just becomes the cycle. You know, as a parent, guilt comes in when you hold yourself accountable to standards that aren't your own, that don't belong to you, that the expectations are absolutely unrealistic. And do you know what? If you're getting those standards and expectations from social media, they're made up, they're not real. Do you know, I see mummies who have themselves crucified to have immaculate children, immaculate homes. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, please, dear God, and the guilt and shame that we feel in and around, somehow we're not good enough. We're not good enough for our children. And guess what? In your child's eyes, you are always good enough. Isn't that a lovely thing? Because what a
So
child,
how did you come to that conclusion in your now maybe when they were babies, but when they grow older, in our children's eyes, I am good enough.
Mhm.
Is
And
that
they're
the
always,
truth?
well, do you know what? When it actually boils down to it, there are always going to be periods of conflicts. You know, there are always going to be periods of, as a parent who hasn't experienced, they hate yous. You're awful. You're the worst person in the world. And, you know, I wish you weren't my mummy. And, you know, those are really powerful messages. Our children use them really well, don't they? They seem to throw them at you at the moment when you're at your lowest ebb. I don't want you to be my mummy anyway. And really and truthfully, you know, when you talk to children and grown-ups, you know, children and their parents who have navigated through all of that, well, isn't that real in every relationship? In every relationship, you know, sometimes they go through cycles of, you know, having really healthy attachment with that person. Sometimes they annoy us. Our kids are allowed to be annoyed with us. We're allowed to be annoyed with our kids. And there's this whole sense of parenthood and our relationships with our children, because that's what they are. It's about relationship and connection first. Has to fit a certain, you know, it has to fit a certain model. You know, we're the Brady Bunch. We're not. Relationships are tricky. Relationships are difficult. And trust me, you know, I've worked with kids for 25 years, right? And I see mummies who've dropped their kids, you know, to school in the morning, or, you know, are having session with me with their children because I work with parents and children together. And they're just feeling this not enoughness for their child. If you speak to any educator, any childcare provider, especially when it comes to mummies, our ears are bleeding and we're quite bored actually hearing that my mummy did this and my mummy said that and my mummy did it. So when our children are not in our presence, their stories of us are lovely. They're lovely. 90% of the time, sometimes teenagers do get my mummy's a XYZ or whatever.
Yeah. Katrina, I'm going to have to call quits now on our podcast. I'm sure we could talk for many a thing, and I'm quite sure people would have many a question to ask also. But let us know where people can find you on social media or on the internet.
So my website is www.destinedforgreatnessni.com, and I am on socials. Pearly, hate socials. I am on Facebook and Instagram as Destined for Greatness NI. And yeah, if there are any questions following it, drop me a wee mail. Sure, I'll put it on Instagram stories and get a wee bit of mileage out of it.
And also, if you're listening on this podcast on Spotify, there's a wee uh, box below which says if you have any feedback or comment, if you want to put a question there for Katrina, or if you want a bit of one-to-one support yourself. And I'm sure you do parent group workshops. Katrina, you put them out there. You probably advertise them on your socials as well. But what I'll do is I'll put the link for your website anyway in the description below.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Evelyn.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in and joining with us today. All things mummies and daddies and parents, and sometimes it's the greatest job in the world, and sometimes it's the worstest job in the world. Sometimes you love it, and sometimes, oh boy. But nobody ever gets it right, and we never get it wrong. I think, as you say, we do what we can do with the best that we know, and all that we had ever wished for our children. I've said that to mine. All I wish for is your happiness, and sometimes to take the rocky road to find that happiness. But then again, I work with a lot of people, and it took for me for many years to figure out where I wanted to go. So Rome wasn't built in a day. Give yourselves a break. And thank you, Katrina Mallon, for your time and your knowledge and your wisdom today.
Thank you so much.